The war room was a constellation of alien species, each radiating tension, authority, or barely contained fear, and at the center of it all stood the human, quiet and still, his dark eyes scanning the holographic battlefield with a precision that made even the seasoned commanders uneasy. His name was Kael, a newcomer to the Interstellar Coalition, yet somehow the room felt his presence more than any veteran general. The briefing was loud, chaotic, voices overlapping as different delegates argued strategy, fleets, and planetary defenses. The Grathari, with their crystalline exoskeletons, rattled their mandibles in impatience, while the Valari, serpentine and sinuous, hissed suggestions about flanking maneuvers that no one fully trusted. Every minute, the human remained silent, absorbing the storm of orders and data. To the others, his quietness seemed like ignorance or hesitation, a dangerous flaw in such a critical moment. But Kael's mind worked differently. He didn't need to speak to understand the pattern of battle, the subtle weaknesses in the enemy's formation, the invisible threads connecting their weapons, shields, and supply lines. As the coalition debated whether to commit the fleet to the outer system or defend the inner colonies, Kael's eyes flicked to the projection of the enemy fleet, noticing a detail no one else had. The diagonal spacing of the dreadnoughts created a vulnerability where their shields overlapped inefficiently. He didn't interrupt. He never interrupted. Instead, he waited, letting the noise of the room build around him until it reached the crescendo where rash decisions were made. That was the moment he would act. Lieutenant Commander Soren, a grizzled veteran of 20 intergalactic campaigns, leaned over the table and barked. "We need a decision now. The Council wants a recommendation." Every species in the room turned to Kael, expecting a simple human answer, something naive or reckless. Yet he only tilted his head slightly, still silent. A murmur of disapproval ran through the room, and Soren's clawed hands drummed on the metal table, frustration mounting. The Valari delegate, her scales shimmering in the bright room, spat out a hiss of impatience. "The human is useless. We cannot trust someone who does not speak when the fate of a system is at stake." But before the council could escalate, Kael finally spoke, his voice calm, deliberate, and entirely human, carrying an authority that seemed to cut through the cacophony. "You are aligned wrong. Your dreadnoughts leave the central flank exposed. If we move the strike fleet through that gap, the enemy's shields will fail in seconds, and we can collapse their formation before they even realize it." The room froze. Silence filled the war room, a silence so profound it felt as if the stars themselves had stopped. Eyes widened, jaws loosened, and even the skeptics hesitated. Soren blinked, unsure if the human was speaking sense or madness, but the projections on the holographic table confirmed Kael's observation. It was true. The alignment error was minor to the untrained eye, but catastrophic if exploited. "Explain," Soren demanded, his voice rougher now, but tinged with a flicker of curiosity. Kael's mind raced with solutions, each step calculated with the efficiency of a predator that had learned patience over years of survival. "If we split the outer fleet into two wings and draw the enemy into the gap, their dreadnoughts' shields will overlap poorly. We can punch through at point delta 9 and disable their primary weapons in under 90 seconds. From there, we exploit the opening to collapse their fleet like a domino chain. Casualties will be minimal on our side, and the system will remain intact." Every species around the table began to chatter in disbelief, analyzing his words against their own data streams. The Grathari clicked and clattered their exoskeletons, muttering in their harsh language, while the Valari coiled tighter around their chair, mouths working in disbelief. Kael remained calm, unmoved by the shockwaves he had unleashed. He didn't gloat. He simply waited for the room to process that a single human had, in moments, outmaneuvered generations of combined military experience. Soren, after a long pause, exhaled sharply and muttered, I did not see that." Kael inclined his head slightly, the faintest smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "You were all looking at numbers, shields, and hull integrity. I looked at the pattern. Battles are not won by data alone. They are won by understanding the rhythm of conflict and exploiting what others cannot see. A murmur of grudging respect spread through the room, but it was tempered by suspicion. The human was different, unpredictable, dangerous, and in coalition terms, unpredictability was both a weapon and a liability. Soren leaned closer, his voice low. "You've done this before." Kael's eyes met Soren's, unflinching. "Yes, and I will do it again." The council members hesitated, some impressed, others unsettled. The briefings continued, but the air had changed. Where once humans were considered weak, impulsive, and incapable of understanding the grand scale of interstellar war, this single quiet human had rewritten their assumptions in minutes. No one argued further. They listened. When the enemy fleet appeared in sensors days later, the coalition executed Kael's plan to perfection. Dreadnought shields faltered exactly where he had predicted, and within moments, the enemy formation crumbled. Communications lit up with the shocked voices of other commanders, reporting unexpected victories. By the end of the day, entire systems had been secured with minimal loss. The council convened again, this time in reverence, though still with caution. The Grathri delegate spoke first, his mandibles clicking. "This human, he is not like us. He does not follow our rules. He does not speak when he should, yet he sees what we cannot." The Valari hissed softly, their eyes narrowing. "And that is the warning sign. Silence hides danger or brilliance." Kael remained quiet once more, watching as the galaxy learned a simple truth. Underestimating a human, especially one who chooses to remain silent until the right moment, is the deadliest mistake anyone could make. After the battle, Kael returned to the ship assigned to him, a sleek human-designed frigate that seemed almost laughably small compared to the massive warships of the Coalition, yet it carried the weight of his reputation. The corridors hummed with energy, crew members casting curious glances at the human who had single-handedly turned the tide of an interstellar war. No one approached him directly. Respect and caution kept them at a careful distance. Kael did not seek admiration. He simply observed, cataloging every report, every new anomaly, every weak point in the Coalition's defenses that had been exposed by the hastiness of their previous engagements. Silence was his ally, patience his weapon, and in the quiet moments aboard the ship, Kael's mind spun calculations that no computer could match. Days later, intelligence reports warned of a retaliatory strike from the enemy, a fleet larger and more aggressive than the one he had just destroyed. The council panicked, voices rising, arguing over the best course of action. Kael remained silent, seated at the center of the strategy table, scanning the holographic maps with his dark, unwavering eyes. His quietness, which once had unsettled everyone, now drew attention like a magnet. Soren leaned toward him, voice low and tense. "Kael, speak. What do you see?" Kael's fingers traced a slow line across the map, highlighting a trajectory no one else had noticed. "They will attack through the Varen Rift. It's the narrowest approach, and they know the Coalition will assume we expect a frontal assault. But they cannot see the secondary currents in the rift, the gravitational anomalies. They will be trapped if we position even a small wing at the right coordinates. It's risky, but it's the only way to neutralize the fleet without massive losses." Murmurs swept through the room. A few delegates nodded slowly, sensing the human certainty, while others scowled, unconvinced. "Risky?" Soren asked. "That could mean losing half our fleet if you miscalculate." Kael's gaze remained steady. "Or it could mean ending this war in one day. That is the choice." The council hesitated, but in the end, Kael's track record left them no option. Orders were issued to position the Coalition fleet as he directed, small wings maneuvering with surgical precision, each captain following instructions that went against their instincts. When the enemy fleet entered the rift, the gravitational anomalies twisted their formation into chaos, the dreadnoughts colliding and exposing gaps that Kael had predicted. Within hours, the human strategy proved flawless. Ships that had once seemed invincible were crippled or captured, and the enemy command structure collapsed under the unexpected assault. The Coalition's losses were minimal, the victory total The room erupted with incredulous celebration, yet Kael did not smile. He remained at the table, eyes scanning the projections, already noting the subtle changes in enemy tactics that would inevitably follow. Soren finally approached, exhaustion and awe etched on his face. "You're unbelievable. We've never seen anything like it. How do you do this?" Kael leaned back, voice calm and measured. "I don't see the world like you do. I don't rely on instinct or protocol. I observe patterns, predict outcomes, and act when the timing is right. Silence is my strategy. Waiting is my advantage." Over the following weeks, Kael's reputation grew. Stories spread across systems, first whispered, then shouted. The human who did not speak during briefings, yet commanded victory where hundreds of commanders failed. His methods became legend, but so did the unease around him. Other species began to understand a truth they could not accept. Humans were unpredictable, capable of seeing angles and connections no alien species could comprehend. And unpredictability in war was terrifying. Kael, however, paid no attention to fame or fear. He focused on the next threat, the next calculation, the next moment where silence would carry the weight of life and death. One evening, alone in his quarters, Kael reviewed intercepted communications from the enemy. They were already planning, adapting, and Kael noted their errors with clinical precision. A small smile formed as he realized the pattern of their mistakes, the same ones that would allow him to anticipate their next move. The council would call him again, beg for his insight, and he would answer only when the time was right. That was the human way, and that way had saved more lives than any council decree or fleet deployment could. Somewhere in the corridors of power, whispers spread. The human is a weapon, a force beyond comprehension, and one day, someone will pay dearly for underestimating him. Kael remained calm, reading, calculating, waiting. The galaxy had learned a vital lesson. A human who chooses silence in the storm is not absent of thought, but armed with foresight, patience, and a strategy no alien mind could predict. And in the shadows of this understanding, one truth echoed louder than any victory or fleet. Silence is not weakness. Silence is a warning, and when Kael finally acted, no one would survive the shock.